show about mental health. Today we'll be focusing on the leading mental health issue in Australia, anxiety. Anxiety is a mental health issue that is affecting a huge amount of people in Australia. Approximately 14% of Australians will be affected by an anxiety disorder in any 12-month period, which is really quite shocking. Also, anxiety is the most common mental health disorder, as anxiety affects approximately 14.1% of Australians. On today's show, we'll be looking at what anxiety really is, the health inequalities that contribute to anxiety, and specific minorities that would tend to suffer from anxiety more than others. First of all, we'd like to tell you exactly what anxiety is. Anxiety is a mental health issue that causes an intense feeling of worry and distress. These feelings are very hard to control, hence making it hard for any person suffering from anxiety to cope with everyday life. On average, 1 in 4 people, that's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men, will experience anxiety at some stage in their life. So what exactly causes anxiety? Anxiety is developed due to a combination of many different factors. This may include family history, personality, stressful events such as work stress, or physical health and substance abuse. Symptoms of anxiety may include panic attacks, hot and cold flushes, a racing heart, lightening of the chest, quick breathing, restlessness, or feeling tense and edgy. Some psychological symptoms include excessive fear, worry or obsessive thinking. Also, some behavioral symptoms could include avoidance and situations that make you feel anxious, which could impact on study, work, or social life. One group that is most affected by anxiety is students. This is due to the fact that they have to keep up with high standards that school gives them, which could be unnerving at times if you are not performing to the best of your ability. They also need to keep up with the trends of social media so they can fit in where their age groups may also have caused anxiety for them. Another group that is affected by anxiety is parents, due to the cost of giving their children a comfortable life to live in. Over the last century, it has become more and more expensive to have a child, and in present times, parents struggle to give their children a good and worry-free lives. Also, there is the issue of the ever-growing work problems. Parents need to be able to complete the task that they are set by their boss, while also being able to take care of their own children. They also want to make sure that they are giving the right information and want to feel that their contribution is valued at their workplace. How do health inequalities contribute to anxiety? Health inequalities are the different health statuses between population groups that are socially produced. Poor education is one of the social inequalities that contributes to anxiety. This is due to the person not being able to meet the high standards in the education system to proceed through their school life. This will most likely cause anxiety, as they'll become nervous to pass through those standards and have a chance of not going through and being ridiculed. The Indigenous people would fall into this category, as in the 2016 Close the Gap report, it showed that the Indigenous children weren't performing to the standards of the non-Indigenous students. There are also more Indigenous students that dropped from school at Year 10, while only a few went to Year 12, which is the completely different story for the non-Indigenous students. This shows that the Indigenous students couldn't cope to these standards with poor education. We will now be consulting a health professional to see what their perspective is on anxiety in Australia.
My name is Slaisha Amatia, and my current occupation is a medical student at ANU.
Why do you think there is a high rate of anxiety in Australia?
There are low levels of gratefulness. This is a cultural issue, but it has many major impacts. If you go to a third world country, for example, India, there are much lower rates of mental illness because people have this cultural attitude to be grateful for the small things in life. I've met children who are living on the streets but are happy that they have shoes even though they are filled with holes. Gratitude is an outlook on your life and your material. Health can improve by practicing it.
Why do you think there is a high rate of anxiety in Australia?
Technology. As our world increasingly becomes dependent on technology, there's less human-to-human contact. People are spending more time looking at screens than they are with each other, and that is a major factor that can lead to mental health issues.
Have you seen any severe cases of anxiety in your career, and how have you treated them?
It is important to remember that anxiety is not a two-sided thing. and that you have it or you don't. Everyone has anxiety, but on a scale. Some patients may be at 3, some may be higher, like 9 or 8. We treat patients with medication, but many other therapies may be useful too. Some patients buy dogs as a companion or protector. Some do music therapy, and some change their lifestyle behaviors like diet and exercise. Treatment really depends on the individual and how they learn to cope with anxiety.
Do you think there is a specific minority of people that suffer from anxiety?
Indigenous Australians and those living in rural and remote areas have higher rates of anxiety.
Do you think there are any specific health inequalities that contribute to people?
Socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, geographical location all play roles in access to health services and the way the services may be delivered. In major cities, we do not have many beds available to public hospitals for mental health patients. In rural and remote areas, there are even poorer access to mental health services.
How can we raise awareness of health inequalities within different population groups in Australian society?
We need to raise awareness by encouraging people to seek help early on. Prevention is the most important part in the public health response of increasing rates of mental illness. We need to try to remove the stigma around having a mental health illness that prevents people from getting help. Some ways to do this and things that are currently being done include Headspace school programs on mental health illness, media campaigns, and training GPs.
As you can see, anxiety is quite devastating to people in Australia. We'll be now showing a real-life case of someone who has been affected by anxiety.
The first signs that something wasn't right for me was that I could no longer wake up and be okay with the day. Everything that was put forward was going to be an extreme challenge for me. Snowballing worries is probably the hardest thing that I've ever come to terms with. The feeling of going from a state of, calmness when I first woke up, and it was almost instantaneous that somehow my thoughts would just be flooded with everything at once. And I think about the meeting that I had, and then almost instantaneously the thought about the meeting turned into about the thought of whether or not I'd done the right thing for the meeting, which then turned out to be the thought of whether or not the people in the meeting liked me. Are they going to not like me now because I'm proposing